Hello and welcome back to M.C.McNeel's Blood for Flowers. So come with me now on a journey through time and space as we go back to 380 BC. And this is Chapter 10, Blood for Flowers. So it was. The sun had long since set and the oil lamps were brightly burning as the huge feast was served to the 80 or so women and men gathered at the long wooden tables. This seating arrangement was most beneficial to the women as they could squeeze up close to the men, one handsome dark-eyed man on either side. Here King Viacles introduced his most trusted and bravest Spartan, Admiral Vasha, in charge of the naval fleet, to Thera, and she was well pleased by the king's recommendation for the breeding season. Thera sat there in the middle of Vi and Vasha as they sat and ate and drank and spoke with one another, talking of common things. Now, as soon as Vasha sat down next to Thera, his heart was immediately taken by this gorgeous, red-haired woman with the brightest green eyes which sparkled by the light of the candles on the table as they sat out in the warm night under the cherry trees and the twinkling stars, with just a sliver of the silver moon in the shape of a bow on the eastern horizon. He glanced down at her long, tan, well-toned legs and muscular thighs, which were exposed when the folds of her white linen gown were moved and lifted a little by the wind. Her long, soft-colored hair blew in light wisps against his arm as Vasha sat beside her. She had a smile that could lift the heart of a nation, and she smelled of jasmine flowers. Vasha did his best to catch her eye and interest through his charm and stories of the sea, but Vasha knew Thera was far too taken by his king. Thera thanked the king, saying Vasha by far would be the best choice out of his men, and this was true. But as long as Thera was in the company of King Viacles, all her attention and concentration of heart and mind was solely focused on the king. So there she sat, enjoying the delicious food prepared and spread before them. The king called for all the amphores of sweet red wine to be opened. Many bonds would be formed tonight from this feasting, and Thera knew as she watched over the long course of dinner, her beautiful drunken ladies becoming more enamored with the men, exchanging passionate glances, stealing kisses here and there. Thera, by the hour, became so enamored by herself with the king, she had flashes of drunken thoughts of breeding with him. Now she, of course, like all free people, could choose to do whatever she would allow herself to do, but here she would never allow herself to go so far as to break the law of her nation, for they do not breed with married men. The men of Sparta had also sworn an allegiance to their wives, and they would never dishonor their betrothed by taking another woman. This is when these thoughts, along with the oysters and wine, began to turn her stomach. Thera said nothing of this as the night drew to a close and the candles burned down. Soon the king would return to Sparta to the bed of his queen, and Thera was left at the table with Vasha, who saw Thera's reaction in mood to the king's departure. Where she was once happily laughing with an incredible lightness of being that, had she the power of flight, could have just floated away up into the sky, so elated was she in mood. Yet now, here, alone with Vasha, a great weight had been brought down on her mood, and she even seemed to sink down on the bench a little. This made Vasha think of a wet bird, who has the power to fly, but the heavy weight of the water refuses to let it fly free. Vasha drank another portion of wine with this beautiful wet swan as he thought of her, and he did his best to improve her mood, but only the king himself could achieve such a great task. So it was, Thera, seeing and hearing the procreation of the others, requested Vasha escort her back to her private tent, which he was more than happy to do so. Now, as they bid good night, Vasha had been informed at dinner that these women carry with them a little golden statue, and if she gives you her tiny little statue, this is the sign that you have been selected for the season. Now Vasha knew, of course, Thera had no intention of giving her little statue to him this night. He knew, of course, he would have to try again, for his king would not avail himself to the breeding season, and Vasha was hereby to determine break Thera from the spell and intrigue of the king. Well, that's going to be hard to do. So Thera wasn't feeling very well, and she told to Vasha to hit the bricks. So Vasha returned home on the path through the cypress trees to Sparta, where he came upon 2 young Spartan soldiers boasting to one another in the night, saying, "Iona chose me. She is the blue-eyed copper blonde you saw me with in the lake. She is an officer in the cavalry." "I was selected by Lexa, captain of the cavalry." The 2 men laughed as Vasha walked close behind, going unnoticed by the 2 drunken men who had just sated their lust with these foreign women. "Ah, now that Lexa, she let me suck her toes and she tasted of honey." "Impossible!" Vasha spoke loudly, startling them. "Women do not taste like honey," Vasha balked. "They do when they let you spread honey on them." The 2 men laughed as Vasha gave them a serious look. "You 2 are drunk," Vasha scolded them a bit. "And you're too sober." The drunken officers replied, then teased the admiral further, asking, "Why, Admiral Vasha, what say of you your good lady Thera? Are you coming from her bed this evening?" Vasha felt a bit of jealous anger lay hold of his heart, so he spoke not to the officers, only shaking his head, leaving them to their bragging and boasting as he went on ahead, for he was much in need of a good night's sleep. I don't mean to laugh, but it's kind of funny. As for Commander Thera, she lay upon her bed with a great restlessness in her heart and mind, and she could find no rest. Morpheus, the god of sleep, would not even come and wrap his calming arms around her, and her mind thought only of the king. She recalled all the stories he shared with her, the looks and little winks and the sound of his laughter. He smelled like bay leaves and his bright, beautiful smile. Thera played everything over again and again in her mind from the time she first laid eyes upon the king, as he rode up to greet her on the road many, many hours ago. She remembered looking over as she swam in the water of the mountain lake at the handsome dark-eyed Greek as he watched her naked, glistening skin. Thera could find no rest, and so she decided to get up and leave her tent, wearing only a sheer white gossamer thin gown, as she went out barefoot, where she came upon the path that led through the cypress trees to Sparta. Thera was very curious to see the city. And what harm to the treaty would there be if she only went up to the city just to see how the Spartan people lived, just to look at the buildings there in the moonlight? The thought of, perchance, a glimpse of the king or his queen would not be such a bad thing. So Thera went out on this peaceful, warm spring night, the scent of cherry blossoms and pines heavy in the still air, Artemis peeking down on Thera as she went through the woods, faint shadows of moonbeams illuminating the way. A rush of nervous energy coursed through Thera's veins, which pulsed with the thrill of this night and what might come. Okay, so that's going to be end of chapter 10. Yes, all right, I'm so happy. So I hope everyone is having a happy holiday season, and I'm so glad here to be with you, and we'll do this again real soon. So much love from Texas all over the world. Mary Catherine. Peace out.